There's a lot more interest in preserving older buildings now than there ever was before, because some of them are quite interesting, and particularly on James Street North. Hamilton, during the early years it was settled, which was in the 1780s actually. Most of the early settlement was down by the harbor, and one of the earliest streets constructed, of course, was James Street. James Street North was the center of industry and commerce for Hamilton. Nothing went much south of King Street at all. It wasn't until the late 1800s that somebody actually constructed a business on James Street South and was told they were going to fail because it was past the commercial area. So James Street is one of the oldest streets in Hamilton and has always been one of the busiest. James Street has had a lot of buildings go. Just recently, in the last couple of years, the Tivoli Theatre developed major crack and had to be torn down. A number of significant residences have been torn down. Probably the biggest single loss on James Street was the loss of our City Hall, which was right across from King William Street. And when they decided to reconstruct City Hall, which is now on Main Street, Main and Bay, they sold the site to the Eaton's Company, who then tore it down. And a friend of mine said that when he was a very small boy, his father took him to show them the start of knocking it down. So they got one of those huge balls that they were going to knock down. And they took a huge swing, and all that happened was it bounced off. It was constructed that well. But it didn't matter. They tore it down anyway and put in the Eaton's store that was there, which is also gone because they tore it down to create the Eaton Center, which is gone, but not the building's still there, but it's now something else. Christ Church Cathedral is one of the first major buildings constructed on James Street because you had the major Anglican church there. There has been some adaptive reuse of older buildings that's been useful. I mean, the CN, the Canadian National Railway Station, which was derelict for a long time, was bought by LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, and is now a banquet center. And it's been beautifully restored. It's actually quite lovely. And then the Lister Building, which was in a state of extreme disrepair, is actually, again, being done by LIUNA. And then the city will be moving some of its offices in there. And the Lister Building, of course, was the first indoor shopping mall in Canada ever when it was constructed after a fire destroyed the original one in the 20s. There was no thought for preservation until probably the last quarter century. Before that, if you wanted to knock something down, you just went ahead and knocked it down. You didn't think about preservation. And then in about 25 years ago, they started something called the Local Architectural Conservancy, which is called LACAC for short, and they actually police historic buildings. Present-day James Street actually has become almost a cultural heart of Hamilton because of the fact that all of those artists who found Toronto too expensive are now moving to Hamilton and setting up their studios down there. So actually James Street North has become a major focus for the arts in Hamilton. 10 years ago I wouldn't have walked down James Street North at night, but now I have no problem doing that at all, especially for the art crawl.